back.
Cool. Okay. So ask yourself. You're unmuted. Go for it.
Oh
Okay.
no.
Hi, Vaush. How are you
I should
doing?
have said no vegan questions tonight. What's up, man?
Oh, you had a chance to escape the AMA and everything. Not much, just the usual. Coming back with the same kind of argument that we didn't get to finish off last time because I was cucked by my phone dying.
Listen, listen, okay? Maybe we can do a truce, okay? I've been unironically buying Beyond, I Want to Be a Girl. I've been buying Beyond Beef and the fake
What's a girl?
veggie chicken patty shit so I can reduce my meat consumption. Now that I have the money, I'm doing my best. It doesn't taste that bad. Yeah, I'm putting work in, okay? We're getting there.
Hey, well, I mean, that's actually really good. Obviously, well, I should say it's better because it's not good if it's still, causing a bunch of murder.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Better than it was before. So, props for that. Well, I mean, if that's the case, you might not object to the argument anymore.
Oh no, what's the argument? I probably still do. Hit me up.
Okay. Well, it's four premises and a conclusion, right? And it's formally valid. It's just going to be R implies P, S implies not Q, R, S, therefore P and not Q. Just going to refute the premise of this argument you gave against veganism a long time ago, which maybe you don't hold to anymore. So
Yeah, I'm gonna try my best.
Here's the first one, Vaush. So, if avoiding meat produced through capitalism maximizes well-being to a high degree, then we oughtn't buy meat produced through capitalism.
Okay.
We agree about that.
Well, that's false.
Well, wait. Okay, wait. Hold on. Okay, let me get out my notes. All right.
Go for it.
Okay. Give me again.
If avoiding meat produced through capitalism maximizes well-being to a high degree, then we oughtn't buy meat produced through capitalism.
Okay.
Oh, if I knew you were going to go all out and start typing, I would have typed it out so I could just copy-paste it to you.
Okay, so I think I take issue with this one. So I don't necessarily. Okay, wait. So by oughtn't, do we mean it would be better if you did not, or it would be immoral if you did?
We mean immoral here. We talked about this last time. You have a certain threshold where you say it's actually immoral to do the thing.
Yeah, okay. Then in that case, I think I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to disagree with premise A. I'm going to say that the degree to which consuming a commodity in capitalism hurts the world is not the only factor that we can use to determine whether or not it is immoral to participate in that system.
So I thought that you had said that you're a utilitarian and that there's a threshold for any action where it causes enough suffering that it's immoral to do the thing.
Yes, but I would argue that threshold has already been met for other commodities that we all consume. And for that reason, unless we're willing to bite the bullet and all feel like shit over everything that we do, because we also consume shirts that are made in sweatshops and what have you, then we have to recognize that there is a degree of ethical alienation we experience from the production process of the commodities we consume.
Okay, so the problem is that I tried to explain this last time, but you're actually contradicting yourself. So if we make a universally quantified statement for all x, if x maximizes well-being to a high enough degree, then we oughtn't do x. Then we say there's an x that maximizes well-being to a high enough degree, but it's not the case that we oughtn't do it. That'll just be a logical contradiction. You can't say that, to put it in natural language instead of being formal about it, right? You can't say that for any action, there's some threshold where the thing becomes immoral, but then there's an action that there's no threshold. Sorry?
I'm not.
Who's
I'm not
talking? I'm just talking to Vaush, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm not saying it's not a matter of whether or not it's a threshold. I believe that the consumption of commodities even if the production method of those commodities is unethical, is done in a way which alienates us from the ethical consequences. So, like, for example, I don't think a person is committed an immoral action for buying a T-shirt from Target, even though they're financially propping up an institution that procures those goods through massive levels of exploitation in the developing world. So, my argument here would be that what we do to animals is bad, and we should work to reduce the harm that we produce with regards to that. But I don't believe it makes one immoral to not do so. Like donating, for example. Like, should we donate money to charity? Yeah, probably. If we can. But does it make it immoral of us not to? Well, I wouldn't make that argument.
Okay, but is there a threshold where any action becomes immoral that causes enough negative utility?
I think I would make a special exemption for the consumption of commodities because we're alienated from the actual the immorality of the process of production. After all, the harm
to be clear, if the bullet you'd have to bite there is if eating meat causes galaxies of people to be holocausted, it's still okay to eat meat. It's not something we oughtn't do. Or is there a threshold?
No, yeah, I would bite that bullet. If I lived on Earth in the year 2 billion or something, and an entire galaxy is economically devastated to produce commodities that I consume there, and I was born into it, and I was taught that it's normal to consume those commodities, I would have to say that while it would be good to not do that, I don't think it would be immoral to do that. I don't think people should be considered to be immoral agents for participating in society.
Okay, so just to be clear, you have an option to buy one piece of meat and you could get your other food, let's say for free, Vaush. Someone offers you a free meal, or on the other hand, you can pay for a piece of meat. If you pay for the piece of meat, infinite people will be tortured for infinite time. That's ethical on your view to eat that piece of meat, to buy that piece of meat?
Difference. That's not how commodity production works. For commodity production,
that doesn't matter though. That's not. I'm not to be rude. That's a slight red herring, right? Because the whole point is if you say there's no threshold, I can make the consequence as bad as I want, and you have to say, yeah, it's not immoral, right? So I can say one bite of meat, infinite people tortured forever, and you have to say, oh, there's no threshold.
But for me, it's not about the consequence. It's about the degree of alienation that we experience with regards to the harm done by the commodity production. If, for example, like I was like, hey, do you want $1? I'll kill 1 billion people. No, that'd be immoral, of course. Like if I had to press, like, here's the option. I press a button, I press it, I get 1 million ducks, but I kill 1 million people. Pressing that button is immoral. However, if I am a humble businessman in America who, through the utilization of economic engines which lead to the deaths of millions outside of my country, am able to become a millionaire, I don't think that act in and of itself makes that person immoral, even though the system itself causes harm. Because I think we're alienated from the consequences. I think it's a matter of collective responsibility versus individual responsibility.
I'm still just not clear. I mean, are you still a utilitarian or not?
No, I am, because I think that we get more utility from recognizing that there's an alienation from commodity forces here. Like, for example, if I may.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. So you like walk around the street and you see a homeless person, right? And you can drop them a 20 or you can not. It's probably a good thing to drop the person a 20. I think most people would agree, right? They probably need it more than you do. But I wouldn't, if we walked by and you didn't give them a 20, I wouldn't say hey dude, what the fuck? I thought you're supposed to give them a 20. What the fuck, dude? And for me, the reason for that is because there isn't necessarily a perfect syllogy between what makes something good and what makes something immoral if not done.
I know, but we're not talking about just what makes something good. I understand that on your view, if it gives utility, it's good. If it doesn't give utility, it's bad, right? And I had people in the comments when I posted a conversation, the last one we had, where they think that I don't understand what you're saying. So I'll say it to you and you tell me if I understand what you're saying, right? So you're saying positive utility good, negative utility bad, but there's also a threshold on the positive and negative side where the thing actually becomes immoral to do. And by immoral, you mean something different than just bad. You mean like you have a personal, like you would condemn someone over it, something like that, right? So there's good and bad, but then there's also a threshold where you say someone is actually, like, you really deem them a fucked up person for doing the thing, right?
Yeah, but yeah, I would agree
Okay.
with those on the so long as we add the addendum that there are ways in which a person can be alienated from the consequences of their actions, such to the fact that it doesn't reflect on their morality.
Okay, but if you say, right, if you say that there is no threshold, right, because so there's multiple problems. So firstly, there's the problem of saying that there's a threshold everywhere and then saying that there's a case where there's not a threshold. That creates a contradiction. But if you want to become something other than a utilitarian there and add something else in, you could try to do that.
Wait, that's not a contradiction. I'm still utilitarian. I believe that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. The reason why folks say that is because it's unhelpful and counterproductive to make everyone believe they personally are bad people because they buy from retailers who make their money off exploitation.
Okay,
Anything
but
you buy in a capitalist system is reinforcing exploitation.
sorry.
The goal here shouldn't be to frame people as being immoral for participating in these systems. The goal should be to help them to understand that finding alternatives to participating in those systems would be better.
But is there a threshold for any action where it is sufficiently bad for utility that you'll say it's immoral?
Yeah, unless
Okay.
we're alienated from the consequences of our consumption, in which case I don't think it really matters how much harm is done.
So what you actually mean is no, there's some situations where there isn't a threshold, right?
Yeah, if in the specific
So-
case, if you were alienated from the consequences of
So-
because anyone
so
else would have to agree with that. Do you think you're a bad person for buying
Well,
T-shirts?
wait a second. I want to just press this line of questioning, right? So if you say for all actions there's a threshold, and then for some action there's not a threshold, that's a logical contradiction. Now, if you want to revise the position and just say there are cases where there's no threshold, you don't want to make the universally quantified statement that there's always a threshold. That's fine too, but then you're going to get that reductio. So just to be clear, I just want to make sure what you're saying, and then I want to deliver where it leads, okay? You're saying that there are some actions for which there is no utility threshold. Doesn't matter what the utility is, you're not going to say the thing is immoral, right?
Yes, there are some actions that regardless of the utility they produce, or disutility, I don't think it has any consequence on the actual morality of the action. We know this for a fact.
Okay.
Because if you're at the top of
Can
a
I follow up,
mountain-
though?
Well, I just want to clarify, like, we know this. If you're at the top of a mountain and you toss a rock off of it just nonchalantly, that rock could just land in a ditch, or that rock could end up braining a grandma. Wildly different outcomes, but you're alienated from the consequences because the way in which you engaged in that action didn't really foretell who would end up getting hurt from it.
Okay. Now, all I want to say, right? So there's kind of two things. So the first is if you make a universally quantified statement that for any action there's a threshold, and then you say there's an action where there's not a threshold, that's a contradiction. But if you want to get around that contradiction, because first of all, can we please acknowledge that's a contradiction, just as a starting point? Because this is just there's no argument to be. Sorry, why am I echoing? Someone's echoing me.
Safety.
Hello. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. It was someone else there.
I was never that hard on harping. Okay, so listen. I love you, but this is one of the things that leads to people calling you insufferable. So when I say, just to be clear, when I say, yeah, I do think that there's a threshold between disutility and immorality, but also, like, there are certain ways in which we can be insulated from the consequences, like moral consequences of our action. Like, it should be pretty obvious. I'm saying, like, there is an extenuating circumstance where I think that my general standard is inapplicable. Like,
yeah, that's fine. I'm not
trying to simultaneously nail a contradiction where, like, I've never harped too hard on, like, the universality of my statement.
Okay.
I'm only trying to apply the idea of there is no ethical consumption under capitalism broadly to veganism, you know?
Okay, but we understand that if someone were to make a universally quantified statement that for any action there is this threshold, then say there exists an action where there's not a threshold. We understand if someone were to say that, that would be a contradiction, right?
Okay, how about this? Here's my
please,
new statement.
Vaush, I don't want to be rude, but just please answer that. We understand that would be
trying to clarify.
Well, just start with a yes or a no, though, right?
I forget the question.
Right, but yeah, because I just for the sake of dialogue, we have to listen to each other. It can't be you just like I don't want to be rude. I like you.
Wait,
I just
are you kidding? Wait,
I don't want I don't want you
Are
to.
you accusing me of not listening to your arguments?
I'm accusing you of rambling off instead of answering me.
I think I'm
Wait,
rambling.
what?
Off.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
wait. Here, this is look perfectly. All right, look.
But are you going to answer?
In situations,
It's a question on the table.
People are morally culpable for their actions. I do believe there is a threshold which determines the distinction between disutility and immorality.
Right.
And in situations where they are not morally culpable, which I would argue the consumption of products, the production of which we're alienated from, would be, I do not believe that is the case.
Right. So I understand now you're making a new statement, but we understand that the initial statement, even if it's just down to you phrasing what you actually believe imperfectly, is contradictory, right? We understand that if someone says, for all x, if x decreases utility to if you say for any action there is some threshold where it becomes immoral, and there is some action where there's no threshold where it becomes immoral.
I feel like I've clarified this, though.
Well, the clarification that I'm looking for is, yes, that's a contradiction, but I'm revising my position. That would satisfy me.
Because I don't think I ever hardcore nailed that position. I don't think I ever.
That's okay. That's why I'm not trying to hold you. That's why I'm not trying to hold you to it to some unreasonable degree.
To this position. Are you kidding me?
I've
addressed my new position. You're like, well, let's go back. Do you recognize this was a hypocritical? No.
I said, do you recognize if someone were to say that?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Now let's go to the new one. Right now, this is the problem with the new one.
Isaac, 1 second. We do need to get a couple more people in here, so you guys can wrap.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just.
We can hit it. The final blow.
Okay. So the final blow is this: if you're saying that there is no utility threshold where the action would become immoral, then I can put whatever the fuck I want on the other side. They rape you to death. They rape every single human on the earth to death. There is infinite suffering, trans genocide, all of the people you stand up for in your videos, all tortured brutally, and we actually have infinite universes filled with infinite amounts of those people being tortured. You have to say, yeah, that's not immoral, right? If buying a piece of meat, if buying a piece of meat causes that is not immoral. That is what you're committed to if you're saying there's no threshold.
If buying a piece of meat contributes to an industry that does that, I think there's an important distinction there. Then yeah, I would bite that bullet. If I was born onto a planet where it was socially normalized that people eat meat, and for some reason the production of that meat required the suffering of an entire galaxy behind it, I still would not argue that the person who engages in that form of consumption would be immoral, because there are probably a large number of extenuating social and cultural factors that have normalized that process to the extent that we could derive greater utility from focusing on positive, restorative arguments.
Vaush, the condition,
rather than trying to morally condemn people who
that
is utilitarian.
The whole condition is that it gives you infinite negative utility, right? That's the whole idea. You can't appeal to positive utility when you say there's no threshold of negative utility where this thing would become immoral. You're actually Molyneuxing right now, which is where you add in something that's not entailed into the hypothetical to make the bullet bite look less bad. Right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if. Well, come on. I let you finish. Let me finish. It doesn't matter if you. It doesn't matter if you say, "Hey, well, there could be this positive utility also," because that can be removed, right? I can just say, "Oh, well, how about the situation where there's fucking none," right? And you still have to bite the bullet.
Okay. Again, there is not a direct union between the morality of an action and the amount of utility it produces. Obviously, if you could eat meat and you would contribute to an industry that would...
I'm not talking about eating meat. I'm talking one bite. One bite of... One sec. I don't want it to be equated to an industry. One bite of steak cause... One second.
Okay.
I want to answer the clear question.
You can consume meat to any amount, and doing so would perpetuate an industry that would enable suffering on a galactic scale, or universal scale, or maybe multiple parallel universes that we have somehow stripped together into some sort of strange meat production facility. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
But let's just be clear. Oh, are you fucking kidding? Why am I muted?
Any consumption of that commodity would still argue it does not make the person consuming it immoral, assuming that it is societally normalized
fucking
for them
bullshit.
to
Fuck
that
that.
process. And I ask you this: what if you could get less people to eat meat by arguing positively, as I do, that it's better if we eat less meat, rather than negatively, as you often do, claiming that it is immoral to eat meat? In that case, a system which you claim enables this utility would actually bring about better outcomes than your outright condemnation of that system.
Okay, so I got muted there. So the point that I was actually making before I was so rudely fucking muted by whoever thought that was a nice idea. If you're saying there's no threshold, we can forget we can forget all of this shit about the system. We can just say one bite of steak causes infinite galaxies of suffering, and you have to say that's ethical without rambling, without anything else. Is that ethical? Yes or no?
That's not the syllogism.
Sorry, the exact claim, if we want to be precise, is you will not say that that is immoral.
No, but that's not what I was talking about. When you do realize that, like,
this
even
is
as a vegan,
what you're.
Wait, dude, come on.
You're dodging me though, Vaush. I don't like being dodged.
I'm not dodging you.
Then answer the question.
Wait.
Look, if there's no threshold, then I can make. If there's no, because Vaush, you're not answering. If there's no threshold, I can make the negative utility infinitely high, and the action can be one bite of a piece of steak. One bite. Okay, right. But do you?
It has nothing to do with the actual consumption of the product. It has everything to do with the system you're supporting by buying it. You do know that as a vegan, eating meat
I'm just not getting a clear answer.
Worse, right?
I just want you to clearly say yes or no to this, Camps. And I'm sorry to be pushy, but you're not
relevant to my position. It has nothing to do with
you. Don't get to just say irrelevant if I push Vaush. I'm sorry, but if I push you into a corner, Vaush, if I push you into a oh my god, wow, unbelievable. Okay, so I got cut off there. So for anyone who can tell what just happened there, I pushed Vaush into a complete corner, right? If he says that his concern is utility, right? He can't bring in other concerns because he said his concern is utility. If he says that there is no threshold where he's going to say that the action becomes immoral, no threshold of utility, I can say that biting into a piece of steak, buying the one piece of steak, right, that causes galaxies and galaxies of people to be tortured to death. And he has to say, yeah, that's not immoral. Now, he doesn't want to directly say that because he knows it makes him look fucking insane. And I don't mean to be rude. I overall like Vaush. I think that I triggered him because, frankly, I just wrecked him there. But yeah, that's the bottom line, okay? So the initial position he gave, where he said that for any action, there's a threshold of negative utility where the thing becomes immoral, and there exists an action where it's not, there's no threshold of negative utility where it becomes immoral. That creates a direct logical contradiction. Okay, now he wants to revise that position. That's fine. I don't have any problem with the revision, right? And for anyone who wants to write it out formally and just prove there's a contradiction with a proof thing, just write a universally quantified statement and an existential statement that says, for all x, just pick whatever letters. P of x implies q of x, and there exists an x such that p of x and not q of x. It's a contradiction, okay? Now, if he wants to revise that, and he wants to say, and sorry, I'm pretty fucking annoyed after that. I generally respect Vaush. I don't know what the fuck that was about. I assume it was just because I pushed him into a corner. If he wants to revise that and say, okay, look, that position doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do the contradictory position. But I'm going to take a position where there nonetheless is, for a certain kind of action, no threshold of negative utility where I'll say the thing becomes immoral, then I can go infinite on the negative utility. And he has to say, yeah, it's not immoral, right? Buying one piece of steak causes galaxies to be tortured to death. You got everyone Vaush stands up for. Trans people getting their fucking eyeballs stabbed out. You've got, I don't know, like they're being like electrocuted. Black people are being like just add whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You're like raping all of their kids or something. You can do whatever the fuck you want, right? There's no amount of negative utility where it becomes immoral. So if you biting into the steak causes galaxies and galaxies of people to be tortured to death, that's not immoral on Vaush's view. Wrecked. End of story.